thousands of veterans miss out on benefits they're actually eligible for, and, well, many don't even realize it. What if a 0% VA rating, something most veterans think is completely worthless, could actually be worth $500,000 to your family after you're gone?
I mean, I know it sounds like an exaggeration, but it is an absolute reality. And honestly, ignoring that 0% rating is, it's one of the most devastating financial missteps a veteran can make.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Veterans Briefing. Today, we are on a very specific mission. We're going to take a deep dive into some really fascinating and, frankly, sobering sources.
Yeah, we're looking at VA regulatory guidelines, medical journals detailing long-term injury progression, and several legal case studies regarding survivor benefits.
Right. And our goal is to break down the reality of dependency and indemnity compensation. You'll usually hear this referred to as DIC.
Exactly. We want to explain exactly why ignoring a 0% disability rating could literally cost your spouse their legacy.
So let's unpack this right away. We have to start with a statistic from these legal case studies that just, well, it stopped me in my tracks.
It's a rough one.
It really is. Roughly 70% of DIC claims are denied simply because the veteran never filed the original claims while they were alive.
Yeah, that is a staggering number of families just, left without support.
But looking at this from the outside, I want to play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
Why on earth would someone spend the time, navigate the bureaucratic nightmare of the VA, dig up old medical records for a rating that pays absolutely $0 a month right now?
Right.
I mean, it just feels like an immense amount of red tape for no immediate reward.
And that frustration is completely understandable.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's the primary reason that 70% denial rate exists in the first place.
Because it just feels pointless.
Exactly. You look at a decision letter, you see 0%, you see $0, and the logical human response is, why bother?
Right.
Like, I'm not going to poke the bear or waste my afternoon filling out forms for literally nothing.
But you're saying it's not nothing.
Far from it. But it requires a complete shift in perspective. A 0% rating is not about a monthly check today.
All right.
It is a legal mechanism. It effectively acts as a premium-free life insurance policy for your family. And at the same time, it quietly sets up a safety net for your own future health.
Okay, so it's less about the payout and more about the positioning.
Yes, exactly.
It's like getting your foot in the door of a highly secure building before it closes. You might not be up at the penthouse making money yet, but you're in the lobby.
That's a great way to put it.
You're in the system.
Yeah.
And once you're legally in the system, they can't lock you out when things inevitably get worse.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. You are legally in the building. Because the first thing that 0% rating does is establish a permanent record of service connection.
Right.
The VA is officially acknowledging that your specific condition is linked to your military service. You've crossed the legal threshold.
Meaning you've provided the in-service event, the diagnosis, and the medical link.
Exactly. You never have to fight that specific baseline battle again.
Which seems incredibly important as you get older, right? Like memories fade or records get harder to track down.
Oh, absolutely. And the medical journals in our sources bring up another massive point here, which is just how the body degrades over time.
Right. Being in that lobby must make it easier when one issue triggers something else.
It does. And this is where we get into secondary claims. The human body is a highly integrated biomechanical system.
Right.
So let's look at the biology of a bad knee, which might only warrant a 0% rating initially. You don't get a check for it.
Yeah.
But because you favor that right knee, you subconsciously alter your gait. You shift your weight to your left leg.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, over a decade, that altered biomechanical load grinds down the cartilage in your left hip, and it just throws your lumbar spine entirely out of alignment.
Oh, wow. So the 0% knee rating is the legal anchor that allows you to claim the severe back and hip issues later.
Exactly. Though it goes well beyond just orthopedic wear and tear. Consider something neurological, like tinnitus.
That constant ringing in the ears.
Right. The VA might rate that at 10% or even 0, but medically, chronic tinnitus triggers sympathetic nervous system arousal.
Which means what exactly?
It means your brain is constantly perceiving a threat. That leads to chronic cortisol release, severe sleep deprivation, and eventually profound anxiety or depression.
So the 0% rating for the ears is a stepping stone.
Yes, it's the required stepping stone to support a much higher secondary claim for mental health.
It's basically a biological domino effect.
Exactly.
And if you didn't legally claim the first domino because it paid $0, Well, you can't claim any of the subsequent dominoes that fall.
That is spot on. And while we're talking about those subsequent health issues, we have to mention healthcare. Once you have that foot in the door at 0%, you are legally entitled to free healthcare at the VA for that specific condition.
No copays or anything.
No copays, no deductibles, no questions asked. If that 0% knee eventually needs a total replacement, the VA covers it.
See, that alone is massive, especially considering the astronomical rise in medical costs.
Oh, for sure.
It's like laying the concrete foundation of a house. You can't live in the foundation, and it doesn't look like much today, but when the storm comes, that foundation is the only thing that keeps the roof over your family's head.
I love that analogy. It's perfectly accurate.
If you're finding these discussions helpful, please subscribe to Veterans Briefing so you never miss important updates and practical information for veterans and their families.
Yes, please do. There's so much vital info we try to cover here.
So I want to pivot here because you mentioned a life insurance aspect earlier, and I have a feeling this ties back to that $500,000 number from the beginning.
It absolutely does. The most critical function of a 0% rating is that it establishes DIC eligibility for your spouse.
Dependency and Indemnity Compensation.
Right. It's a tax-free monetary benefit paid to eligible survivors of military service members who died in the line of duty, or survivors of veterans whose death resulted from a service-related injury or disease.
And how much are we actually talking about here?
We're talking about roughly $1,700 a month, tax-free, for the rest of your spouse's life.
Man, that math gets staggering quickly. I mean, if you map $1,700 out over 20 years, that is over $400,000.
Right.
Over 30 years, it pushes $600,000. That is literally the difference between your spouse keeping the family home or having to sell everything and move into a spare bedroom at their kid's house.
Which is exactly why understanding how a spouse actually qualifies for this is paramount, because dealing with the VA is rarely a simple situation.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, and our sources highlight two distinct legal pathways for a spouse to qualify for DIC.
Okay, let's break this down.
The first one we should discuss is often referred to as the 10-year rule.
Okay, looking at the regulatory guidelines, the terminology here gets pretty dense. It mentions requirements like 100% P&T and TDIU. Before we explain the rule, can you translate that jargon? Like, what do those terms actually mean for a veteran's everyday life?
Certainly. So 100% P&T stands for permanent and total.
Okay.
It means the VA has evaluated your service-connected conditions, determined they meet the 100% disability criteria, and legally acknowledged that there is zero reasonable expectation that your conditions will ever improve.
So you are totally disabled, permanently.
Exactly.
And what about TDIU?
That stands for total disability based on individual and employability.
Okay, and who is that for?
This is for a veteran who might only have a 70% rating on paper, but their specific service-connected conditions make it medically and functionally impossible for them to secure or maintain substantial gainful employment.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so the VA pays them at the 100% rate because they literally cannot work.
Got it. So how do those statuses play into this 10-year rule for the spouse?
Well, if a veteran holds either of those statuses, 100% P&T or TDIU, for at least 10 continuous years immediately preceding their death, the spouse automatically qualifies for DIC.
Automatically?
Automatically. Under this specific rule, the cause of death is completely irrelevant. The veteran could pass away from a sudden non-service-connected illness, a car accident, or quite literally having a tree fall on them.
Wow.
Because they cross that 10-year threshold at maximum disability, the VA provides the spousal benefit automatically.
Wait, I'm looking at these timelines and I'm a bit confused. It takes years, sometimes decades, for conditions to progressively worsen to the point of hitting 100% P&T.
Oh, yeah, usually.
What if a veteran finally reaches that rating, but they die at year 8? They didn't hit the 10-year mark. Does the spouse just get absolutely nothing?
And that is the exact vulnerability that catches thousands of families off guard. If you die before you hit that 10-year mark, you default to the other pathway,
Which?
Service-connected death. Under this pathway, your death must be caused by or substantially contributed to by a condition that is already service-connected.
Ah, and this brings us right back to the lobby metaphor. This is where that 0% rating becomes the lifeline.
Precisely. If your death certificate lists a massive myocardial infarction, a heart attack, and your hypertension or ischemic heart disease was service-connected, your spouse has a clear legal pathway to DIC.
Even if it was just 0%.
Here is the crucial part. It applies even if that high blood pressure was rated at a flat 0%.
So it's fundamentally about the medical chain of events documented on the death certificate linking back to the VA's legal record.
Exactly.
But what if the fatal event was caused by a secondary condition? Say, the heart attack was triggered by severe sleep apnea.
The mechanism remains exactly the same. The medical journals in our stack show how untreated sleep apnea causes repeated drops in blood oxygen.
Hypoxia, right?
Right, which forces the heart to work exponentially harder, eventually leading to right ventricular hypertrophy or fatal arrhythmias.
Makes sense.
So if the sleep apnea is service-connected, and the coroner notes that the sleep apnea contributed to the fatal heart strain, the pathway to DIC is open.
That's incredible.
And the same mechanism applies to cancers linked to toxic exposures like Agent Orange or burn pits.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the biological root cause of death is officially recognized by the VA as service-connected, the spouse is legally protected.
But if that root cause isn't service-connected on paper before they pass, well, that brings us right back to that 70% denial rate.
Exactly, because if the veteran dies without that legal connection established, the grieving spouse now inherits an absolute legal nightmare.
What do you mean?
They have to prove, post-mortem, that a condition their spouse died from was caused by military service decades ago.
Man, to really ground this in reality, let's look at one of the legal case studies from our sources.
Sure.
Walk us through the story of Frank and Linda, because it perfectly illustrates the psychology behind this and, well, the catastrophic aftermath.
Yeah, Frank's profile is one we see constantly in veteran advocacy. He was a tough infantry veteran, 3 combat deployments.
A real hard charger.
Exactly. He came home with deteriorated knees, a compressed spine, constant ringing in his ears, and significant untreated trauma.
But he didn't file.
No. Frank operated under a very specific, stubborn mindset. He firmly believed that filing for disability was taking a handout.
I see.
He felt it was his noble duty to leave the VA funds for veterans who, in his words, needed it more, like amputees or burn victims.
You know, I have heard that exact sentiment so many times.
Yeah.
It's this idea that there is a finite pot of VA money, and if I take my slice for a bad back, I'm literally taking money out of the pocket of a guy in a wheelchair.
It's such a common psychological barrier, but it's based on a complete fallacy.
Right, because it's not a fixed pie.
Exactly. VA disability compensation is a mandatory entitlement funded by Congress. Frank claiming his knees doesn't take a single dime away from a double amputee.
But regardless of the reality, Frank lived with that mindset.
He did. He worked a civilian job for 25 years, retired at 65. By then, his biomechanics were completely wrecked. His chronic pain prevented him from exercising, leading to severe obesity. He had classic undiagnosed sleep apnea. He was snoring heavily and gasping for air every night.
And his blood pressure must have been through the roof.
Dangerously high. His wife, Linda, repeatedly urged him to see a doctor, but he just brushed it off as getting old.
The classic stoic response, endure the pain and don't complain.
Right, but biology doesn't care about stoicism.
No, it doesn't.
At 67, the cumulative strain on Frank's cardiovascular system peaked. He suffered a massive heart attack and died in his living room.
That's awful.
Linda had been married to him for 42 years. She had navigated the isolation of his deployments, raised their children, and absorbed the brunt of his unspoken post-traumatic stress.
Wow.
And when the dust settled, she filed a DIC claim, expecting the system to recognize his decades of service.
And the VA denied it, because to the VA, none of that medical history existed.
Right. Frank never filed a single claim. Not for the knees, not for the back, not for the hypertension, and certainly not for the sleep apnea that likely killed him.
So legally, there was nothing.
From a purely legal standpoint, the VA looked at his file, saw 0 service-connected conditions, looked at the death certificate, which said heart attack, and concluded there was no evidence linking his death to his military service.
So what does a spouse even do in that situation? I mean, how do you fight back when the primary witness is gone?
Linda spent 2 years in administrative appeals. She drained her savings hiring specialized lawyers. But the legal burden of proof for the VA requires 3 things.
What are?
An in-service event, a current diagnosis, and a medical nexus linking the two.
And she couldn't provide a current diagnosis because Frank was dead.
Exactly. She couldn't get a medical examiner to evaluate the severity of his sleep apnea retroactively. She couldn't provide Frank's living testimony about when his symptoms started.
That is it's an almost impossible legal threshold to meet post-mortem.
It really is. After tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees, her claim was permanently denied.
That is chilling. She stood by him for over 4 decades, and because he thought he was doing the honorable thing by avoiding paperwork, she is left completely financially vulnerable.
Yeah.
His attempt at being selfless was, in reality, unintentionally selfish. He didn't realize his VA rating wasn't about his pride, it was his wife's armor.
That is the exact paradigm shift that needs to happen for so many veterans.
So the question becomes, how do we ensure the person listening right now doesn't put their own family in Linda's position?
Well, looking at the advice distilled in these advocacy manuals, it seems to start with a pretty brutal self-assessment.
Yeah, let's move away from the tragedy and get into the tactical strategy. What's step one?
It starts with a blank piece of paper. You need to sit down and do an honest inventory of your own body and mind.
Okay.
Write down every single condition, ache, pain, or psychological struggle you have right now that is worse than before you raised your right hand and took the oath.
Even the minor things like the stiff neck, the acid reflux, maybe a weird skin condition.
Especially those things. Because as we discussed with the biomechanical domino effect, today's minor acid reflux is tomorrow's esophageal issue.
Right.
Once you have that raw, honest list, you have to compare it to your legal reality. Log into your va.gov account, pull your current rating decision letter, and look at what the VA actually acknowledges.
Okay.
The delta between your handwritten list and the VA's legal list represents the gaps in your armor.
And the strategy is to file a claim for every single one of those gaps, regardless of what you think the rating will be. Basically, get into the lobby.
Yes. File for everything, with a heavy emphasis on conditions that have biological pathways to fatality.
Like hypertension, respiratory issues.
Exactly. Metabolic conditions like diabetes, sleep apnea. You must establish the legal marker while you have the breath in your lungs to attend the exams and advocate for yourself.
Now, one thing that struck me in these sources is the emphasis on administrative organization. Getting the rating is step one, but if your spouse can't find the paperwork when they are planning your funeral, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Administrative chaos is the enemy of survivor benefits. You need to build a physical, dedicated folder.
What goes in it?
Inside that folder goes your DD-214, the cornerstone of your military record. Next, your current VA rating decision letters showing those 0% and higher connections.
Got it.
And crucially, add a certified copy of your marriage certificate.
Why the marriage certificate specifically?
Because DIC is a spousal benefit. The very first thing the VA will verify is the legal validity of the marriage at the time of death. Don't make your spouse hunt for it in the attic.
That makes a lot of sense.
And finally, print out a blank copy of VA Form 21P 534EZ.
I saw that form referenced in the manuals. What exactly does it do?
It is the specific application for DIC, death pension, and accrued benefits. It is the literal key to the lock. Having it printed and ready in that folder tells your spouse exactly what administrative action needs to be taken.
Which leads to the hardest, but probably the most vital part of this entire strategy. The conversation.
Yes. You can't just build the folder and hide it in a filing cabinet.
Okay.
You have to sit down with your spouse, open the folder, and explain what everything is.
I imagine that's an incredibly uncomfortable conversation, to look at your partner and discuss the logistics of your own death.
It is. But avoiding a 10-minute uncomfortable conversation today guarantees they will spend years in a grieving, confused, and financially terrifying situation later.
Let me push back on this process a little, though.
Okay.
Because as I read through these VA regulatory manuals, the legal threshold for establishing that nexus, the medical link between the service and the current condition, is incredibly dense.
Oh, it is.
It's not just saying, my knee hurts. You need complex medical evidence. For a veteran trying to connect sleep apnea today to a deployment 20 years ago, it feels like you need a law degree and an MD just to file the paperwork.
It is incredibly complex, and that overwhelm is entirely valid. The VA requires a physician to provide a highly specific legal medical opinion.
So what do you do?
Well, the good news is you don't have to navigate that medical evidence gap alone. In fact, our sources highlight how third-party medical evidence roadmaps are changing the landscape here.
Like what?
For instance, the case studies mention a group called Xterra Health as an example of how this is tackled legally.
How does a roadmap approach actually solve the nexus problem?
Instead of a veteran guessing what medical literature applies, organizations like Xterra utilize independent medical providers and subject matter experts to review the veteran's entire file.
Oh, yeah.
They look at the service treatment records, the current diagnoses, and they map out the specific biological and legal pathways, the nexus pathways.
So they're essentially translating the veteran's medical reality into the highly specific legal language the VA demands.
Precisely. They use independent physicians to write individualized nexus letters.
So it's not just a form letter.
Not at all. It's a detailed, heavily cited medical opinion explaining the etiology of the condition and why it is, as the VA requires, at least as likely as not, connected to military service.
That phrasing is key.
It really is. It bridges the gap between a veteran knowing their body is broken and legally proving why it's broken to the federal government.
That makes a lot of sense. It removes the burden of becoming a self-taught medical legal expert.
Exactly.
So as we pull all these threads together, let's distill this down for the person listening. What are the core truths they need to walk away with?
First, a 0% rating is not a bureaucratic insult. It is a vital legal marker. It is premium-free life insurance for your family, and it's the gateway to secondary claims and healthcare.
Right. And second, the burden of proving a condition is service-connected becomes infinitely heavier and often impossible once you are gone.
Yes. Your spouse cannot easily go back in time without your testimony or living medical exams to win a battle you avoided. You must establish that legal connection while you are alive.
And third, proper documentation is a tangible form of legacy. It is the final act of protection you provide for the person who stood beside you through the chaos of military life, the moves, the deployments, and the transition back to civilian life.
If you take nothing else away from our discussion today, I challenge you to take one immediate action. The moment you finish listening, grab a pen and paper and physically write down the list of conditions you are carrying but haven't legally claimed.
Don't just think about it.
Put it in ink. That list is the blueprint for securing your family's future.
It really requires a shift in how we view our responsibility. In the military, we spend our entire careers learning exactly how to protect our buddies on our left and right in the field.
We memorize standard operating procedures.
Right, we rehearse battle drills until they are muscle memory. We leave absolutely nothing to chance when it comes to the safety of our unit.
But we have to ask ourselves, are we applying that same rigorous, tactical, leave-nothing-to-chance mindset to protecting our own spouses when we're no longer here to stand guard?
That is the ultimate question every veteran needs to answer.
The mission of protection doesn't end when you hang up the uniform. The parameters just change. Protecting your family's future through the VA system is the most important mission you have left.
It's a profound shift in perspective. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Please share your own experiences navigating DIC, secondary claims, or the reality of 0% ratings in the comments below.
Yeah, have you faced that internal pushback about filing? Have you had to navigate this system for a loved one? Let's keep this vital conversation going.
Thank you for watching Veterans Briefing. Take care, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next episode.